The day the sky darkened was the day everything changed. People across Earth looked up in confusion, watching as massive shadowy forms broke through the atmosphere. At first, some thought it was an eclipse, others speculated it was debris from a satellite or meteor. But the truth was far more terrifying. Within minutes, the world's communication systems were hijacked, and a message was broadcast simultaneously in every major language. Humans of Earth. You are now subjects of the Arakta Empire. Surrender or face annihilation. The words echoed through every screen, every radio, and every device capable of receiving the transmission. Panic spread like wildfire. From New York to Beijing, London to Johannesburg, the cities of the world were thrown into chaos. And then the first beams of destruction fell. Massive energy blasts rained down from the Arakta ships, vaporizing entire city blocks in an instant. The power of these beams was incomprehensible. Within minutes, global capitals like Washington, D.C. and Paris were reduced to smoking craters. In the span of a single hour, humanity's sense of safety, of control, was shattered. In a cramped military bunker beneath the streets of Berlin, Captain Elena Drayton stared at the screen in front of her. Her hands were clenched into tight fists, nails digging into her palms. She had been a soldier for years, seen her share of conflict, but nothing had prepared her for this. "They're wiping us out like we're nothing," one of her lieutenants, Sergeant Meyer, muttered. "God, look at them." On the monitor, one of the Arakta appeared. The alien was massive, at least 9 feet tall, clad in thick, metallic armor that seemed to shimmer with an energy field. Its eyes were cold, glowing slits that surveyed the destruction with detached interest. Behind it, more Arakta soldiers moved with military precision, dragging human captives into containment fields, processing them like livestock. "We need to act," Elena said, her voice cutting through the room's tension. "We need to organize a resistance, fast." Meyer shook his head, disbelief still plastered on his face. "Resistance? What chance do we have against that?" Elena stood straighter, her jaw clenched. "We're not going to win by standing in the open, waiting for them to blast us into ash. The Arakta think they can break us. But they don't know what we're capable of. Not yet." She had been monitoring the alien transmissions, gathering whatever intelligence she could from intercepted communications. The Arakta weren't here to exterminate humanity, not completely. They wanted slaves, weapons. They saw potential in humans, something to exploit. That arrogance would be their undoing. Across the world, similar scenes played out. The Arakta systematically disabled Earth's military defenses with shocking efficiency. They had advanced energy shields that rendered most human weapons useless. Air forces were shot down before they could even launch a counterattack, tanks were obliterated with precision strikes, and any attempt at resistance was crushed mercilessly. Governments scrambled to respond. Some issued desperate calls for surrender, while others tried in vain to organize counteroffensives. In Washington, just before it fell, a video of the president was broadcast, urging calm and calling for unity. But it was too late. The power of the Arakta overwhelmed anything Earth's military could muster. Within days, major cities across the globe were under Arakta control. Their ships hovered above the largest population centers, ensuring compliance. The aliens established massive containment zones, where they began sorting humans based on physical and mental attributes. The stronger were taken, the weaker were discarded. The Arakta were careful, methodical, and entirely without mercy. For Commander Thraxer, it was all going according to plan. From his command center aboard the Arakta flagship, he watched the conquest unfold with satisfaction. Another world, another species bent to their will. He had done this countless times before. Every species had a breaking point. The humans were no different. Their primitive weaponry and fractured governments made them easy prey. Soon, they would bow. But something gnawed at the back of his mind. Unlike the other conquests, this world didn't collapse as quickly as he had expected. Yes, their armies were broken, and their cities were in flames, but the humans had not surrendered entirely. Small, isolated groups continued to resist, launching guerrilla attacks and sabotaging Irakta equipment. They weren't a threat, yet, but they were persistent. "Prepare the final phase of the operation," Thraxer ordered, his voice cold and commanding. "We will crush whatever remains of their resistance. They will learn to fear us." Elena Drayton knew the Irakta weren't done. The initial bombardment was only a warning. As she stood before her makeshift resistance group, deep underground, she spoke with calm determination. "They think they've won," she said, scanning the faces of the men and women in front of her. "But they've made one mistake. They think we're fragile. They have no idea what we're capable of." And with that, humanity's true fight began. Weeks had passed since the Irakta invasion, and the alien overlords had grown confident in their control. Across the globe, they had set up towering command centers, like metallic obelisks rising above human cities. Drones patrolled the skies, scanning for any sign of rebellion. Humanity had been forced into submission, or so the aliens believed. In the underground resistance bunkers, far below the ruined streets of Berlin, Captain Elena Drayton and her team were hard at work. Their cell had grown larger, filled with engineers, hackers, former soldiers, and even civilians with nothing left to lose. Supplies were scarce, but they had something the Irakta could never understand: desperation fueled by determination. "How are the EMP devices coming along?" Elena asked as she crouched beside a group of engineers piecing together equipment from scavenged alien tech. "We're almost there," Meyer replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "If these work, we can knock out their shields long enough to strike at the command post." The Irakta had relied on their energy shields to stay invincible, assuming humans had no way to bypass their technology. But the resistance had been studying them, learning how they operated, and Elena's team had devised a plan. A concentrated electromagnetic pulse might disable their shields temporarily, giving them a chance to strike where it hurt. That night, they moved. Under the cover of darkness, Elena led a small strike team toward one of the Irakta outposts on the outskirts of Berlin. The city was a shadow of its former self, buildings left crumbling, streets deserted. Only the occasional whir of Irakta drones pierced the silence. Elena scanned the horizon through her binoculars, spotting the alien patrols around their target, a massive Irakta communications tower. "We need to hit that tower," she whispered. "If we take it down, we disrupt their command structure. They won't be able to coordinate their forces as easily." The group crept forward, each step careful, silent. They reached the outskirts of the tower, and Elena gave the signal. Two men set up the EMP device, positioning it just out of sight. As they activated the pulse, the air crackled, and the Irakta shields flickered and died for a few precious moments. "Go!" Elena ordered. Her team surged forward, launching their attack with precision. The Irakta guards were caught off guard, momentarily stunned by the loss of their shields. Human rifles, previously useless against the energy barriers, tore through the alien armor. Explosions erupted as the resistance threw grenades into key supply depots. Elena moved like a ghost, taking out one guard after another with swift, calculated shots. She felt no remorse. These creatures had reduced her world to ashes, and she would make them pay for every life they'd taken. Within minutes, the outpost was in flames. The Irakta soldiers, overwhelmed by the sudden assault, retreated. Elena stood amidst the chaos, watching the tower collapse in a heap of twisted metal. The strike had been a success. Back in the bunker, news of the attack spread quickly. Similar strikes had been coordinated in other parts of the world, from the ruins of New York to the jungles of Brazil. Humanity was beginning to fight back. But Elena knew this was only the beginning. The Irakta wouldn't ignore this. Their retaliation would be swift and brutal. She gathered her team, her voice steady as she addressed them. They thought we were broken, she said, her eyes hard. But now they know we can fight. This isn't just about survival anymore. We're going to make them regret ever setting foot on Earth. The resistance had drawn first blood. The war for humanity's future had truly begun. The Arakta had not anticipated this. Across the globe, human resistance cells had emerged from the shadows, striking with brutal efficiency. What had begun as isolated acts of defiance turned into a coordinated global uprising. The Arakta were used to quick victories and broken populations, but the humans were proving to be something else entirely, something monstrous. In their command center, Commander Thraxer stood seething as reports flooded in. Outposts had been destroyed, supply lines cut, and entire regiments wiped out in nighttime raids. His elite soldiers, trained for centuries in galactic conquest, were being picked off by primitive guerrilla tactics. And worse still, the humans had started to adapt Arakta technology. "They are scavengers," Thraxer growled, smashing his fist against the command console. "They use our own weapons against us like vermin picking at the remains of a feast." But deep down, Thraxer knew there was more to it. The humans weren't just scavengers, they were relentless. Every time the Arakta pushed back, the resistance struck harder, fiercer, showing a ruthlessness that rivaled any enemy the Arakta had ever faced. The humans were becoming something the aliens didn't know how to fight. In the heart of the ruins of London, Elena Drayton surveyed her surroundings. The resistance had grown in size and capability. With each passing day, more people joined the cause, bringing with them whatever they could salvage, food, weapons, even bits of alien tech. What had once been a scattered movement was now a fully fledged army, bound not by nationalities but by survival. "We have another convoy moving south from Scotland," Sergeant Meyer reported, pulling up a map. "If we intercept it here," he pointed to a narrow passage through the hills, "we can take out their supply of plasma cells." Elena nodded. "Do it. Hit them hard. We can't give them any breathing room." The plan was simple: ambush, destroy, and vanish before the Arakta had time to react. The resistance had learned how to exploit the aliens' weaknesses. Their soldiers, while powerful in open combat, were not designed for Earth's unpredictable terrain. Humans used the forests, mountains, and even the weather to their advantage. Storms that grounded Arakta drones were perfect cover for attacks. The next night, the convoy moved through the narrow pass, unaware of the silent figures hidden in the trees above. When the first Arakta vehicle reached the choke point, a series of explosions ripped through the column. Elena's team had planted IEDs made from scavenged Arakta tech, and now they unleashed their fury. The Arakta soldiers scrambled, their towering forms barely visible through the smoke and fire. But the resistance was relentless. From the shadows, humans opened fire with weapons they had stolen and modified, cutting down the invaders with brutal efficiency. Elena moved swiftly through the chaos, firing shot after shot. There was no hesitation in her movements, no second-guessing. She had long since abandoned any moral restraint. These creatures had turned her world to ash. Now it was their turn to burn. The convoy lay in ruins by dawn, the Arakta bodies scattered among the wreckage. As the resistance melted back into the hills, Elena felt no satisfaction, only grim resolve. The Arakta had thought they were the monsters, the conquerors who would bring humanity to its knees. But they were wrong. Humans had shown them what real monsters looked like, creatures who, when pushed to the edge, became unstoppable. "Send a message to the other cells," Elena said to Meyer as they retreated. "We've got the advantage. It's time to unleash everything we've got." The resistance had become something the Arakta could no longer control, and now, they were on the hunt. The Arakta fleet was in disarray. What had once been an impenetrable armada now limped across Earth's orbit, its flagship heavily damaged and its forces scattered. The aliens' confidence had evaporated. What they had expected to be a swift and easy conquest had turned into a nightmare. In the ruined cities below, the resistance had become something far more formidable than even the Arakta's most fearsome enemies. Commander Thraxer stood at the helm of his crippled flagship, staring at the tactical display, which showed the remnants of his forces. Entire battalions had gone dark, outposts destroyed, and their supply chains obliterated. His soldiers, once an unstoppable force, were now hunted, outmaneuvered at every turn by a relentless enemy. "They are using our own tactics against us," Thraxer growled, his voice thick with disbelief. "How can this be? These humans were supposed to be broken by now." He turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Varric, who looked just as shaken. "Sir, the humans, they've evolved. They're using guerrilla warfare, bioweapons, and even our own technology against us. We underestimated them." Thraxer slammed his fist into the console. "Underestimated? They are vermin, nothing more." But in his heart, Thraxer knew the truth. The humans had become something else, something far more dangerous than he could have ever predicted. They had taken everything the Arakta threw at them and used it to grow stronger. Every strike, every loss had only sharpened their resolve, and now they were a force that could not be contained. In the heart of the resistance bunker deep beneath the ruins of Paris, Elena Drayton sat in front of a holographic map of Earth, studying the movements of the remaining Arakta forces. Her team had been relentless, hitting the aliens from every angle, using the planet's terrain, weather, and even wildlife as weapons. The Arakta, so used to structured warfare, were crumbling under the pressure. "We've pushed them back to their main base of operations in Europe," Sergeant Meyer said, pointing to a blinking red dot on the map. "If we take out their command center, we'll cripple their entire invasion." Elena nodded. It was time to finish this. "Get the team ready. We strike tonight." That night, under the cover of a storm, the resistance launched their final assault. The Arakta command center was heavily fortified, surrounded by shields and patrols. But Elena's team had learned from their enemy, adapting their tactics to pierce even the most advanced defenses. Using a combination of EMPs and stolen Arakta tech, they breached the shields and launched a surprise attack. Explosions rocked the base as the humans moved in, swift and deadly. Arakta soldiers fell by the dozens, unprepared for the ferocity of the human assault. Elena fought at the front, her rifle steady, her movements precise. She had long since abandoned any pretense of mercy. This was war, total war, and the Arakta were no longer the predators. In the command center, Thraxer faced his reckoning. The doors burst open, and Elena stepped inside, her rifle trained on him. The once arrogant commander now looked at her with something resembling fear. "You wanted monsters," she said coldly, her finger tightening on the trigger. "You found them." With a single shot, she ended the war. The Arakta fled, their forces shattered. Earth had survived, but it had changed. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they were not to be conquered, not to be enslaved. In the aftermath, the resistance broadcast a message to the stars. "If you come to Earth, if you seek to make us your prey, remember this, we are the monsters you feared." And with that, the galaxy learned that humanity would never be underestimated again.